Genentech is no stranger to meetings. Big meetings, little meetings, important meetings, very important meetings. Meetings of all kinds are faced with a common problem, running out of time before their conclusion. The people in this meeting are about to lose their conference room. Now they have to wander around looking for another one. Everything else is because you have to do better. So, sure. Just get a room. Here's one. Hey, man, what are you doing in my room? Does anybody know what floor we're on? Excuse me. Get in. Why does everybody keep saying that? Why do people keep saying that? Well, they're trying to tell you about Get a Room, an iPhone app you can get at appstore.gene.com. It'll help you instantly find an available conference room. Here's how it works. Select the building you're in, what time you need the room, and how many people. Get a Room shows you what's available. There's one over there. Then book the room, confirm it, and you get a nice receipt to show everyone that the room is yours. Now meetings everywhere can continue, more productive than ever. Meet well, everybody. Get a room.
All right. So there you go. There's another nice little profile from a company that's found the iPad and the iPhone to be a great enhancement to their productivity. Most every company out there, if they're looking at developing productivity apps, they start with a directory app, right? Or they also work on, I noticed they also try to get their approvals in an app right away. Like I said earlier, I mentioned there's a developer that works closely with PC Mall called eTouch, and I believe they have pre-built directory apps and other types of apps like that, calendaring apps, for you. So you can get your hands on those for a very modest price and deploy those. That way you don't have to develop them yourself, right? You can just take their pre-written code and customize it for your space, call it whatever name you want to call it, and hook into your back-end systems. If you're using Active Directory for your users, or some other LDAP database, they can customize how it, the app attaches to it to get that data. So anyway, very common. That's why I bring it up. So yeah, look, this is what Genentech did. You can see they made their suite of apps for their employees. This is what they did. And so anyway, so just to touch on business for a second in the App Store. The App Store has an enormous collection of curated apps. And when I say they're curated, I mean that Apple vets these things and signs them, right? We make sure that you're downloading the real app and that app is not doing anything funky. And if it does do anything funky, which I think has happened maybe 3 times in our history, if something slipped by us, we just removed the app from the App Store. And guess what? It also was removed from every phone and iPad out there that happened to have it installed automatically. Apple has the technology to do that. So it's an insanely secure environment. And there are so many apps out there. There is an app for that. There really is. I know it's kind of a tired phrase at this point. You've heard it a lot, but there really is. There's an app for nearly everything out there. And if there isn't, then we can have it built for you for a modest sum. So look forward to working with you on that. If you have any needs around application, app development or app purchase, please reach out to me or to your reps at PC Mall or Mac Mall, and we'll all get together and have a call and hammer it all out. But anyway, let's move on to the next slide here. Let's look at Hyatt for a second. Hyatt is a company that runs their entire mobile iOS deployment on apps that are available from the App Store. They didn't write any of their own apps, which I think is really interesting. So they use Keynote to do their presentations, like Steve Jobs would be happy to hear. They use Dropbox for transferring files around to one another. It's all encrypted, so they feel secure and safe there. Then they use Documents to Go. This is the tool I was telling you about earlier that I use to create docx files, XLS, PPTs, and sync to my desktop, right? And I love it. I love it. It's a great tool. And then Triton Mobile is an app that's created just for hotels. It's an app you could go and download right now at the App Store, but it's for hotels, and it hooks into common hotel backends to manage hotel business, right? So that's what they do. They didn't have to write any of their apps. But if they wanted to, they could have. They could have become developers, and they could have hired some people to work, in their company as developers to develop apps. And in cases like that, if there's anybody on the phone that is thinking about writing their own app, Apple won't vet your code, right? So you can write whatever you want once you're a developer and push it out to your employees, right? Apple doesn't get involved in looking at that app. That is an option, but you need to have your own in-house developers, right? Keep that in mind. A company that did this, that's famous for writing their own apps is General Electric. They've written, oh my gosh, over 100 applications. They write them for other companies at this point, but they started out with transformer monitoring, as you can see there, and then look, for every aspect of their business, they have an app, and they've really leveraged this, and they talk openly about the ROI. They don't think for a minute about the costs associated with buying the hardware, right? Because they are making and saving so much money using the iOS and the iPads and the iPhones. So really, really great success story. And they are featured, by the way, as a profile at apple.com/iPad/business under the profiles area. So if you want to become your own developer of apps for your company, you can visit apple.com/business/accelerator. And you can download a PDF there. It's an accelerator guide, and it will teach your employees how to become a developer, to go through the development process, to submit code to Apple for review if you want to go that direction, or if not, then you can just push your apps out directly to your employees. All right, and so now in general, like I've been harping, if you want some general information about the iPad, read some profiles, answer IT questions about security and mobile device management and all that good stuff, the place to go is apple.com/iPad/business. And for your developers, if they need to become developers for the iOS, developer.apple.com/iPad. And if you want to go into iTunes and look at all the wonderful work apps that are available for business, type into your web browser itunes.com/iPad and business or iPhone and business, and you'll have a special page open up in iTunes, right? iTunes will launch, and you'll see a special page called At Work, and you can look at all the great work tools that are out there for the iPad and the iPhone. So with that, I'm going to end my spiel. And let's open it up to Q&A. Are there any questions at this point?
Okay, great. Yes, there are a few questions. So our first one is from Gene. Gene is a photographer and was wondering how he can use photo, or how he can use the iPad in his photo business.
Wonderful, wonderful question. Very creative vertical you're in there. So what I would suggest you do is think about how the iPad can enhance your art, right? So you take a photograph, and I don't know what your workflow is currently, but imagine the workflow being such that your presentation is going to be made on an iPad, right? So you need to get the file from your camera over to your iPad, right? And then once you're on your iPad, you can launch either iPhoto or some other photo-based app. You can apply filters if you want to do that stuff. You can be artistic with it. And then lastly, you have a number of ways of doing this, but you can either use iPhoto to present your photos to a customer, right? Or to somebody interviewing you and you want to show them your work, you can use iPhoto, or you can actually have your own app built. And this app could do a number of things, right? And you could even put together electronic cards that have some of your examples and your contact info, right, to market yourself. So I can think of 100 ways to enhance your business with the iPad. The key is, again, how are you going to make money with the iPad, right? That's what we want to think about. So those are a couple of ideas. Hopefully that helps.
Yes, great, thank you. Our next question is from Evan, and it's how do you set up the VPN on demand? So this is from earlier in your presentation.
Yes, a good IT question. So VPN on demand is configured from a couple of sides. So first of all, from the infrastructure side, you have to have a switch that support, or I should say a VPN router, if you will, that supports VPN on demand. So there are, I know the Cisco ASA series have them, and some other series, and you may have to pay a license to turn it on for all I know. So I'm not going to get in that side of it. I'm not an expert. But once it is enabled on your router, your VPN router / switch, then on the client side, you configure VPN on demand by well, actually, IT would configure it for you, okay? And remember earlier I was talking about MDM can remotely configure your clients? Well, the way it does that is it creates what is called a profile. A profile is actually just a little XML chunk, and that's what's actually being communicated via VPN to all your remote devices, right? So this little XML chunklet is going to be created using MDM, or you can create them in other ways, but we don't need to get into that necessarily right now. But the point is that you create this little XML chunklet, and it has all the VPN configuration information in it, including your shared secret, including authentication information, including the certificate payload, right? And then that is pushed out to all of your clients. So at the end of the day, your router is set up to recognize VPN on demand, and at the end of the day, all your client devices via MDM are configured to send the certificate across the network, to the router for authentication, if that makes sense. So if you need more information on it, there is a white paper available at apple.com/iPad/business, the URL I've been talking about all day, and it's specific to VPN. It's under the IT resources section. So take a look at that. It should give you a little bit more information, and if you contact your switch vendor, I mean, this is not like a new thing. People know, they'll know all about it. So they'll have a good conversation with you about it.
Okay, great, thank you. And our next question, where do I go to get info on in-house app deployment?
Okay, good question. So once your app is written internally, right, you had your developers write the app, you need to deliver it to all of your end users. So where do you go to get more info about it? Well, this is a function of mobile device management, okay? So there are ways to, what you could do is just post a link to let people download an app onto their iPhone. So you could have like a landing page, a web page, where they click a link and the app will download. Or you can create another, like you can actually write a different app that is an app you would give to all your end users, where they would go and they would click links to download apps. So instead of having a web page where they would go to click links to download an app internally via HTTPS, they would have an app where they click a button to download the app. Not unlike the App Store, but it'd be a personal app store for your business, right? So that would be another way to get that app deployed. There's a third way to deploy an app, and this works not just for in-house apps, but it works for apps that are on the App Store. It's via MDM. So when you're in the MDM management console, be it AirWatch's console or Mobile Iron's console, you can tell a certain subset of users or all your users, hey, I want you to install this app, and they'll get a little, a dialog box will appear on their phone, and it'll say, hey, your boss wants you to install this app now. Click this button to install it, and then they'll click the button, hopefully, and authenticate, and it'll install, right? And at that point, your in-house app is deployed on all your devices.
Okay, and then another question here is, can everything that you discussed today work with both the iPad 2 and the new iPad, or are there any limitations?
Everything that I discussed today will work with any iPad. iPad 1 through the new iPad. Yep. But you do need to make sure that your OS is up to date. And I say that just in general. Apple, improves security over time, and it introduces features, and it goes for your Mac, it goes for your iPad. So please make sure, everybody out there, that you're running the most current thing. And what's great also about, if you have an older device, and once you get to iOS 5, all your software updates go on over Wi-Fi now, instead of having to plug a cable into iTunes and all that stuff. it's a much better user experience. So make sure that you're running 502.
Okay. And Joe, real quick, I'm just going to take back control and I'm going to give it to you. If you could put up the screen that that you had all the websites on. We actually we started to freeze towards the end of the presentation.
Oh no. Okay. Yeah. Did you take it away already?
Yeah, I gave it back again.
Okay. Can you see my screen right now, or no?
Not yet.
Okay. Let me bear with me 2 seconds here. Share application, Keynote. Okay. Now we can be back in business here in a second.
Okay, we still have a few more questions, but since we're running over on time, I wanted to make sure that we get that screen back up, and then what we can do is we can just take the questions and answer them at a later time.
Okay.
Does that work
sorry,
for you?
We're having a WebEx problem right now, so it's not letting me share my app. I don't think you're not seeing it, are you?
No.
This is common. You know, it's just a little kludgy, unfortunately, but. I can read them to you, though. Let me say them again. So apple.com/iPad/business. This is it's the splash page for our iPad marketing info. It's great for IT, a lot of tech data there. It's great for business leaders, lines of business leaders who want to learn about other companies and how they've deployed the iPad and what the return on investment has been for them. So that's under the profiles area of that URL. So take a look for that. And then there's a nice section there for apps in business. So if you're interested in looking for an app that does a certain thing, there are apps that are profiled there, and you can read up on those. And then developing apps, you would go to developer.apple.com to become a developer and get development info. And then if you want to actually open up the at work portion of iTunes, you go to, in your web browser, type in itunes.com/iPad in business, and it'll open up iTunes, and it will take you to that special at work page where you can learn about Apple's highlighted and featured productivity tools. Keynote started up for me again. So
yes, we're back.
Are you seeing it? Great. Let me hit play, and there you go. So are we completely out of time, or can we answer any more questions at this point?
It's really up to you. We've gone over by about 7 minutes, but if you want to answer some more, that's
Hey,
up to you.
I have another 20 minutes before I'm in another meeting, so if you want to keep fielding them, let's do them.
Okay, let's see. So our next question is from Evan, and it's as a photographer as well. I'd like to know, what is the best photo editing software for the iPad?
Wow, yeah. I can't give you, if I gave you any information, it would be a personal opinion. And I don't want to rely on, and I'm not a photographer. You should see how bad I am. I'm like the worst photographer in the world. But what I would suggest you do is use the App Store, like I was suggesting earlier. It's really the best way. You know, people have complained to me about the fact that there are so many apps, it's hard to find the right one, right? And it's a good criticism, and it's a good problem to have, frankly. I mean, it's wonderful that you have so many options, but if you want to figure out which is the best, I always rely on that star rating system. That when people rate apps, they give you a really good indicator as to whether or not it's worth looking at all, right? So if you find an app that does something with 1 star, don't waste your time, obviously. So I'm gonna have to send you back to the App Store and get a really credible answer, because I can't give you any good advice.
Okay, and our next question is, how can iPad be used in apparel business? Can you suggest some picture editing apps for iPad and some inventory software apps?
Yeah, so I'm going to go out on a limb here. I haven't deployed a solution such as that, but what I would suggest, you have a couple of options. There are a lot of database apps out there, right? I think the one that is most accessible for a just starting from scratch would be FileMaker Go. FileMaker Go is a great way to access a modest database system. The database itself is a FileMaker database that would reside on a PC or a Mac someplace, and then FileMaker Go is the front-end application, and that front-end application can be highly customized to keep track of anything, right? It can, it's a really nice UI on the front end. You can work with FileMaker directly, and their developers will help you customize the UI to match what you have in mind, right? So I think FileMaker would be the best solution for you. Now, then again, there are a ton of solutions out there. If you already have a back-end system of some sort, you know, like a database, like an Oracle database or what have PeopleSoft, whatever, a CRM or some other database, it's more than likely that there's a front end that already hooks into those, right? So what I would do is, you know, if you have an existing back end, do a search in the App Store for that back end or Google it, and then try to find a software that has a front end for it, right? And then you can contact the developer of that front end and say, okay, hey, listen, I really like the fact that you made this app that hooks into this database like I have, but I need it to look a certain way and do a certain thing. That developer should be able to rewrite that app for you, and it should be really quick because they've already written 95% of the code. They're just rewriting a little bit just for you, right? And then they can sell it to you, and then you're in business. So that's what I would suggest you do.
Great. Another question here is from Angela. It says, how does iPad's built-in features to transfer documents from one's computer when syncing with iTunes compare with other apps?
That's a good question. I use both methods. If I'm needing one file to immediately be transferred across from my laptop over to my iPad, I will pop open iTunes and select it, and then go to Apps, and then scroll down, and then drag and drop the file into the window next to the app that I want it to appear in. Okay, that's the user experience for anybody in the crowd that didn't know that you could do that. That's what you do. That's how you can get a single file over one at a time. Now, if you look at a solution like Documents to Go, right, with that desktop sync app, it can sync over entire folders, entire hierarchies of folders, which is a little bit more feature-rich than one file at a time. And then there are other solutions for delivering apps via the cloud. You know, those all have their benefits. And then there are apps that are centrally administered by IT or some organization like marketing to push out content to all the employees on a daily or monthly basis, right? So a lot of ways to get data over the air that a little bit more. It just really just depends upon, you know, how many people are going to need that file, you know, how many iPads are going to have that file, how often is it going to change, or is it just a onesie twosie thing? So, yeah.
Okay. Our next question is, I'm a lawyer. Can the iPad be my replacement for a laptop, especially if I get a wireless keyboard?
Well, okay, yeah. Well, yes and no. And this is a really good question. I'm glad that somebody asked this. So, the real limiting factor when it comes to the iPad is, do you run any proprietary software that can't be accessed in some way on an iPad, right? Now, the answer to that question is always going to be no at one level or another, because if you have, let's say as a lawyer, you have to access a certain third-party tool to get your job done, right? And there's no iPad app for it. Well, okay, the next question is, well, can you access it via a web page, that database via a web page, right? And if the answer is yes, well, then you're in business. As long as it's a good enough user experience, you can use your iPad to hit that web page and get your job done. If the answer is no, and there's no iPad app and there's no web page way of getting into this tool, then you have the option of running an app that will access remotely access your PC, right? So I happen to use a software that allows me, it's called Mocha, and Mocha allows me to access my Mac from anywhere in the world, okay? And a PC can be accessed the same way. So I can launch this app. I can be in Canada, which I am often in Canada, and launch Mocha, and then I've set up my firewall to forward all these requests through over to my PC, to my Mac, I should say, and I'm controlling my Mac from Canada. I'm living in Texas, right? So in Texas, my Mac is actually being manipulated, but I'm all the way up in Canada. So definitely, there is a way you can always do your job with just an iPad.
Great. And we've got our last question, and then we're going to have to go and show some more URLs once again. This question is from Bill, and it says, I have a need for electronic forms. Examples are visitors confidentiality and a visit form. So if a visitor signs, we want to save each signed form to the Microsoft shared server. Is that something that can be done with the iPad?
Absolutely. It's not an uncommon request. I was just working with a company that they go out to fire stations, and they make people take tests and make sure that they understand things right. And then once they pass the test, they have to sign a doc and then send it up to a server. And they have to keep this data for like 10 years to be in compliance with the government and all this good stuff. So anyway, they have a solution they're using. The one they're using is called PDF Expert, right? And you can use your finger to sign, or you can buy a little stylus to sign the document. It's a PDF, right? You sign it on the glass and then save it, and it's cached locally, and then it can be updated later. Or if you don't want to do a cache local, if you have a 3G connection or a Wi-Fi connection, it can automatically upload it to your server, right? So the question really is whether or not PDF Expert is going to support the same protocol that your database requires in order to receive the file, right? So it may take a little bit of work. It may be that we have to call PDF Experts developers and say, hey, can we tweak your software to access my database, and there may be a little network setup because, you're outside in the world at this point. You might have to, set up your router to forward on any, certain ports traffic to get over to your server from outside the firewall, right? So again, just like any project, it's going to take a little doing, but yeah, I think definitely this is not an uncommon application. It's happening all over the place.
Okay, and then some people were asking about the Accelerate Developers site that you mentioned. Is that the URL that you have up there now?
No, the URL for that is, you know what, bear with me. I'm going to, I think that the slide deck is incorrect. I think, bear with me, I'm going to look it up real quick. You can keep talking while I do this if you'd like. Do you have the next question? We'll come back.
Well, the next question is, what is your email address? People have been asking if they can contact you after.
Please, I love being contacted. It's what I'm here for. My email address is Zorak, that is Z as in zebra, O-R-A-K as in kilo, @apple.com. So please don't hesitate to reach out. So the in-house app development accelerator guide is at apple.com/business/accelerator.
Great, thank you.
I'm looking at it right now. Yep.
Great, and then this is our final question, promise. Thanks everyone for hanging with us for all this. This question is from Shirley, and it's, is there a way to get around not having Adobe Flash? Some of our videos will not play on an iPad.
Yeah. Boy, this is, since the first iPhone came out, we're really good at answering this one. Unfortunately, Flash is not supported, period, on any iOS device. And the reasons for that is that Apple decided early on that the user experience with Flash was subpar. Caused some memory problems, some performance issues. It caused some crashing, and no offense to Adobe, it just wasn't as well written as we'd like. It wasn't a great user experience up to our standards. So we cut out support entirely for it. Since then, Adobe has ceased their Flash development, and everybody, including Adobe, is moving over to HTML5. So the future is moving away from Flash in general, and so that's not, so as a person that hosts Flash on your own website, I would highly suggest you look at what the rest of the industry is doing. They're getting rid of Flash, and they're going HTML5.
That's great advice.
Yeah, and the good thing about HTML5, by the way, is it runs on Windows 8. It runs on, any device, any tablet, anything that is running a browser is going to run HTML5, right? So there's no plugin, and there's no memory problems. There's no crashing. It's a great user experience. And I've noticed nowadays I don't come across Flash hardly ever anymore, which makes me quite happy because I use my iPad a lot, but I very rarely hit a resource anymore that says you need a plugin. So that's good.
And as a reference for some people, we have done past webinars with Adobe on HTML5, and so we do have those archived webinars if you'd like to view them. Also, we do webinars with Adobe frequently, and our next one will be on the 27th, so we'll cover HTML5 there as well. So that ends our questions for today, Joe. Thank you so much for staying and answering all of them. People found it really useful. And thanks, everyone, for staying with us today. Hope you enjoyed it, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Good talking to you. Have a good one. Bye.
Thanks. You too.